Hello and welcome. My name's Sissy and I'm Timothy's widow. Today we're going to be looking at part 2 of Just Like the Drive-Thru, being forced to navigate grief quickly. In part 2, we'll be looking at the silencing sound of grief. Grief brings with it an isolating and overwhelming weight for the griever. In a society that often avoids discussions about loss and mourning, this weight is exacerbated by an unsettling silence that surrounds the grieving process. This silence, while mostly well-intentioned, creates a void that grieving spouses find themselves thrust into, a void that adds an unspoken layer of pressure to an already complex and emotionally taxing journey. The silence surrounding grief can be as deafening as it is stifling. Those mourning the loss of a loved one navigate an unspoken landscape filled with hushed conversations, unspoken taboos, and the burden of keeping quiet about their emotional pain and grief journey. It is essential to explore how this silence contributes to the societal pressure for grieving spouses to conceal their emotions and hurry through their grief journey. By bringing these silences to light, we can work towards a more compassionate and understanding society that empowers grieving spouses to heal on their terms, surrounded by the support and empathy that they deserve. Within our modern society, many will discover that the grief journey is often shrouded in silence, a silence that can be deafening for many grieving spouses. On a daily basis, many grieving spouses feel pressured to hide their pain. Hushed conversations, awkward glances, and unspoken rules surrounding grief can contribute to this sense of isolation and pressure to conform. One of the key factors contributing to the silence surrounding grief are the taboos that surround loss and mourning. It's as if acknowledging these topics will bring about bad luck or discomfort. So conversations about grief and loss are frequently avoided. This avoidance only deepens the feeling of isolation for those grieving the loss of a spouse. When society remains silent about grief, it implies that grieving is something to be hidden away, swept under the rug, or even ashamed of. This prevailing silence perpetuates the idea that grieving is a private and personal matter, leaving many grieving spouses without the emotional support that they desperately need. In the realm of grief, silence prevails for multiple reasons. One fundamental factor is the fear of death itself, a universal human apprehension that often compels individuals to shy away from discussions about mortality and the grief that follows. For many, discussing grief can force them to confront their own mortality, and because that is an uncomfortable topic, they choose to avoid the topic altogether. Coupled with this fear, cultural norms play a significant role in stifling conversations about grief, as they dictate what is considered appropriate or taboo to discuss. These norms may inadvertently perpetuate the stigma surrounding grief, making it a hushed and isolating experience. Of course, different cultures have their own customs and taboos, but these norms can dictate what is considered appropriate or inappropriate to discuss, often leading to the silence surrounding grief. The amalgamation of these factors can generate an environment where grieving spouses feel compelled to keep their pain hidden, trapped in a web of societal expectation and unspoken rules. Grief can be seen as a sign of weakness or vulnerability, which may stigmatize those who openly express their emotions. This societal stigma discourages open discussions about grief, Society often views widows and widowers as broken. Grief is often shrouded in silence due to a combination of factors that perpetuate societal discomfort. There is no denying that uncomfortable emotions such as profound sadness, anger, guilt, and confusion tend to make people uneasy. Society has a lack of understanding of how grief works and its unpredictable nature, despite the fact that at some point we will all have to deal with loss. It is true that because grief is filled with such a wide range of complex and intense emotions, it can be uncomfortable for both the person grieving and those trying to offer support. To sidestep handling these emotions, many will choose to avoid the topic and the grieving person. Unless you're a trained professional, most people lack a basic understanding of grief and the complexities and challenges associated with it. Avoidance, rather than honest and open communication and education, is chosen by most. There are still people who will choose to remain silent about grief because they believe avoiding the topic protects the grieving person from even more emotional pain and discomfort. These misguided attempts to protect grieving individuals could inadvertently encourage silence rather than providing the therapeutic power of open conversations and the significance of recognizing and validating the grieving person's experience. This collective avoidance only perpetuates the silence around grief, leaving many grieving spouses with the heavy burden of unspoken sorrow. We live in a world that praises emotional restraint and many times views vulnerability as a sign of weakness. Discussing grief often involves revealing deeply personal and emotional experiences, which could and does leave many feeling vulnerable and exposed. There are some cultures that expect individuals to keep their emotions in check, to never display vulnerability, and this can lead to suppression of grief-related discussions. The stereotype about strength leaves many to believe that being strong means not showing vulnerability or emotions, and that can discourage open conversations about grief. The expectations placed on individuals to conform to cultural norms of stoicism can be stifling, and the cultural expectations that are often reinforced by stereotypes about strength can lead to grieving individuals feeling discouraged from openly expressing their emotions, especially in the context of grief. An essential part of the grieving process, vulnerability, can be perceived as a breach of the stoic facade that society expects individuals to maintain. Ultimately, grieving spouses may find themselves caught between their genuine feelings of sorrow and the cultural pressure to embody an unyielding strength. This internal struggle not only perpetuates a sense of isolation, but could also delay the healing process, underscoring the crucial need for society to reevaluate these norms and stereotypes. Recognizing that true strength can coexist with vulnerability, and by acknowledging and encouraging authentic expression of emotions, we could create a more compassionate and understanding space for grieving spouses to navigate their grief journey without the burden of conformity. Lack of resources to support individuals in their grief journey still remains a stark reality for many. The absence of readily available resources for supporting grieving spouses contributes to the silence surrounding grief. Grieving spouses often find themselves navigating the grief journey without adequate guidance or affordable assistance, and they often fill in the lack through their own research, and for some, they simply give up. Many can feel as though society has abandoned them in a time of immense need. For some, the journey, struggles, and silence become too much to handle on their own. and they choose to end their journey permanently. To create a more empathetic and supportive environment for individuals who are mourning the loss of a loved one, we need to both understand society's reluctance to talk about grief and provide educational resources for those that courageously step up to the challenge of supporting grieving individuals. There is the potential for society to fill this void by recognizing the invaluable role of open conversations about grief and ensuring that grief counseling, therapy, and support groups can become more accessible, providing all grieving spouses with the safe space that they need to share their experiences and emotions. When society acknowledges the significance of supporting those who are grieving, it could play a pivotal role in bridging the resource gap, empowering individuals to heal and to find solace during their unique grief journey. Promoting open conversations about grief, normalizing discussions around death and loss, and by educating individuals on the complexities of the grieving process is an issue that needs to be addressed, not only in the workplace, but by society as a whole. Environments need to be created where grieving spouses can feel safe to express their emotions, rather than feeling as though they need to conceal their pain within days of the funeral of their loved one, just to ease the comfort level of anyone that they may encounter in their daily life. Accessible and affordable support groups and counseling services are needed for every widow and widower. Society needs to be proactive in understanding the significance of grief discussions, for those discussions play a pivotal role in the reduction of the silence surrounding grief. Awareness needs to be raised about the mental health consequences of suppressing grief, and society can play a pivotal role in the grief healing process with empathy, patience, and understanding. By consciously, compassionately, and with understanding, society can help reduce the silence surrounding grief, and society can empower grieving spouses to heal at their own pace and on their own terms, free from the burdens of pretense, isolation, and suppression. In doing so, we could create a more compassionate and understanding society that truly acknowledges the depth of the grieving process and offers the unwavering support and understanding that all grieving spouses rightfully deserve. I want to thank you so very much for joining me today for Part 2, The Silencing Sound of Grief. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that you'll know when new content and when Part 3 becomes available. As always, please feel free to comment on any of my videos. I would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments section if you felt not only rushed to navigate your own grief journey, but if you've also felt the silence surrounding grief. Please know that you are not alone in your grief journey. Your sound is being heard. Your struggles are being seen. And I hope that as this channel and community grows, that you can find companionship and comfort here. If you haven't done so already, please participate in the polls that I've created in the community section. Your participation and engagement really do help my channel to grow, and it helps me determine the content that I can research and provide here for you. I've been Sissy, and I am wishing you much hope, light, and love. Until the next time, my friend, take care.